Senator from Wyoming.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I ask unanimous consent to call up my amendment number 717.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Madam President, I ask
Senator from Wyoming, Mr. Barrasso proposes amendment number 717.
Ask a reading of the amendment be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I rise today to speak about this amendment, which to me is very simple and very straightforward. This amendment is designed to protect the privacy and the safety of law-abiding gun owners. If a state or local government releases private information on gun owners, which we know has happened, well, then that state or local government will lose part of its funding that comes from the federal government. Now, this information is private information on individuals that have licenses to purchase or to possess or to carry firearms. Again and again, we have seen, Madam President, the irresponsible release of gun ownership information. Most recently, there was a publication published an interactive map of data received by government officials of gun owners in various parts of New York. Now, you may wonder how the publication got such a list. Well, the paper obtained this sensitive list from county officials. The map included the names and the addresses of individuals who have firearm permits in the counties involved. Now, these individuals, law-abiding gun owners, retired law enforcement officers, victims of domestic violence, all had this information about their private lives released. The release of this information by county government did nothing to increase public safety, and in fact, I believe that the government compromised public safety. By releasing the names and addresses, I believe the government put these permit holders and their families at risk. Now, it also put a mark on the back of their neighbors that may not have any firearms. Now, eventually this paper took the map down, but the damage was already done. On January of this year, a criminal attempted to burglarize a home in White Plains, New York. The homeowner was in his 70s, and he had his gun owner information released on the internet. Now, thankfully, the robber did not successfully steal the firearms. Less than a week later, also earlier this year in January, another home in in New City, New York, that was disclosed on the internet was robbed. This time, the robbers successfully stole 2 handguns and 2 firearm permits. Legally obtained firearm permits now stolen. The timing of the disclosure and the robberies clearly appears to be more than just a coincidence. These criminals had the names, addresses, and a map. That's all they needed. And where did they get it? Because of the release of the information by the government. This, to me, is an irresponsible disclosure, but it goes beyond this. They have also released information that put a victim of domestic violence at risk. According to a New York State senator, the county officials also disclosed the name and the location of a victim of domestic violence who did have a legal gun permit. Madam President, I will tell you, throughout my medical career, I've treated victims of domestic violence. I have seen firsthand the importance of not disclosing the location of victims of domestic violence. Often they move among a network of safe houses. They start a new life in a new city. This individual was so threatened that she contacted her state senator, for one, and while I don't know the specifics of her case, I do know that there was someone in her life that posed a threat that warranted a gun permit. So, Madam President, victims of domestic violence should never have their location disclosed by state or county officials. Not under any circumstances that I can think of. This, to me, is a perfect example of the unintended consequences of a government releasing sensitive information. Now, as you can see from these examples, there are many unintended consequences that put the public at risk. The county officials were irresponsible, in my opinion, and they certainly did not increase public safety. I believe they harmed it. So now we have 2 handguns that were stolen in the hands of criminals because of the fact that the list was released and then made public in a broader way. We now have a victim of domestic violence whose identity and location have been disclosed. This release of private gun ownership information not only puts the lives of gun owners and law enforcement and victims of domestic violence at risk, but also their unarmed neighbors. So, Madam President, I bring this amendment to the floor. While this amendment clearly involves gun owners, it's really about privacy, our rights as individual citizens. It's about protecting the privacy of law-abiding citizens who are exercising their Second Amendment rights. So today I ask my colleagues to support this amendment. I'd also like to say a word, Madam President, about the amendment also proposed, we'll be voting on a little later today, that has to do with the concealed carry. And I have a Washington Post front page story from this past Saturday, April 13th, and the article quotes a member of this body. It's a front page article. When you continue over from this body, and it says, somebody could come from Wyoming. Well, I'm a senator from Wyoming. Somebody could come from Wyoming, and he goes on to say, to the big cities of New York or New Haven or Bridgeport and carry a concealed weapon. Well, Madam President, as a surgeon, I did some of my surgical training in New Haven and Bridgeport. So I'm a senator from Wyoming, and it mentions places where I did my surgical training, and I do have a concealed carry permit issued by the state of Wyoming. So I bring this to the attention of this body to say that I would, with this concealed carry permit, under the amendment that I support, be able to carry concealed in Wyoming as well as if I return to the place where I got some of my surgical training, because what we need to do is have this sort of reciprocity. You know, Madam President, in Wyoming, we don't just hand out permits like this. There is an entire regime that an individual must go through to obtain a concealed carry permit. First, you have to prove that you're proficient in handling a firearm, taking a course, you get signed off by a certified instructor, complete an application, pay a fee, and then, of course, submit your fingerprints to the FBI for an evaluation. So once one goes through all of those things, I will tell you, Madam President, criminals do not apply for concealed carry permits. Criminals issue their own. If an individual is currently prohibited by federal law from carrying a firearm, they're going to continue to be prohibited under this amendment. The amendment allows law-abiding individuals to lawfully carry concealed firearms across state lines while following the laws of the host state. Just like a driver's license, this amendment is a license for self-defense across state lines in accordance with state law. So, Madam President, I would encourage my colleagues to vote in support of my amendment, as well as the one that we've just heard from Senator Cornyn about concealed carry. So, with that, Madam President, I yield the floor.